I came home early from my business trip to surprise Stephanie, my girlfriend of 3 years. Despite my successful career as a software developer, I always carried this nagging self-doubt about being enough for her. Nothing prepared me for what I would discover in our shared apartment that afternoon. But even more shocking than her betrayal was how our friends reacted at the birthday celebration 2 days later. When everyone took her side, I did something that confused them all. I simply smiled, took my keys, and walked away. Before I tell you how I turned the tables on the woman who betrayed me and the friends who abandoned me, let me know where you are watching from. Hit subscribe if you have ever had to walk away to win. I had built my career from nothing. After graduating with a computer science degree and mountains of student debt, I worked my way up from entry-level coder to respected software developer at a leading tech firm in Boston. Determination and grit were my companions through those early years of ramen dinners and shared apartments with 3 roommates. That was my life, until I met Stephanie at my college friend Troy's wedding 4 years ago. She was the maid of honor. I was the best man, and the connection between us was instant. With her marketing background and infectious laugh, Stephanie brought color into my methodically planned existence. We moved in together after 1 year and life seemed perfect. We enjoyed weekend hikes, cooking elaborate Sunday dinners, and planning trips we would take someday. Her family welcomed me warmly at holiday gatherings, and mine did the same for her. Friends commented on how well matched we were, the tech guy and the creative marketing specialist. When I received a major promotion last year, my workload increased significantly. I was leading a critical project, developing security software for a major financial institution, a contract that could secure my company's future and cement my position as a rising star. The hours were brutal, with late nights and early mornings becoming my new normal. Stephanie initially supported my career advancement, understanding that this intense period would eventually pass. But as weeks of limited quality time stretched into months, I noticed her growing distant. Our conversations became shorter, our intimate moments rarer. Still, I believed we were solid enough to weather this temporary strain. I even purchased an engagement ring 2 months ago, planning to propose once the project concluded. The Seattle trip was supposed to last the entire week, a crucial meeting with the clients to finalize implementation details. When we wrapped up successfully 2 days early, I immediately booked an earlier flight home, eager to surprise Stephanie with flowers and reservations at the Italian restaurant where we had celebrated our first anniversary. As my rideshare pulled up to our apartment building, I felt a mixture of excitement and exhaustion. The bouquet of lilies, her favorite, felt heavy in my hand as I unlocked our front door. The apartment had a strange energy, something subtly different that I could not immediately identify. "Stephanie, I am home early," I called out, setting my luggage down in the entryway. No response. Walking further into our home, I noticed small discrepancies. A glass of whiskey on the coffee table, strange, since neither of us were whiskey drinkers. 2 wine glasses in the sink, when Stephanie rarely drank alone. A man's watch on the bathroom counter that did not belong to me. Then I smelled it, an unfamiliar cologne hanging in the air of our bedroom. When Stephanie returned from the grocery store 30 minutes later, her face registered shock rather than joy at seeing me. "You are supposed to be in Seattle until Friday," she said, setting down bags on the kitchen counter with unusual carefulness. "We finished early. I wanted to surprise you." Her eyes darted around the apartment nervously. "That is nice. How was your flight?" "Fine." I held up the man's watch. "Whose is this, what-oh that?" My coworker Mark stopped by to drop off some marketing materials. He must have left it. The lie was so transparent it almost hurt. And the cologne in our bedroom. The whiskey glass, the 2 wine glasses. Her story crumbled quickly, under direct questioning. After weak denials and transparent excuses, Stephanie finally confessed. "Fine. You want the truth. I have been seeing Brad." Brad. Our mutual friend who had been part of our social circle for years. The guy who had helped us move into this very apartment. How long, I asked, my voice surprisingly steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. 6 months, she admitted, her initial defensiveness, morphing into something more calculated. "You are never here, Angelo. I needed someone who makes me a priority." 6 months, I repeated, doing the mental math. Since before I had even bought the ring. Look, she continued, her tone hardening. You are married to your work. I needed a real man, not someone who is always too busy for me. She actually smirked as she said it, like my pain was somehow validating for her. I stood there absorbing the full impact of her betrayal, yet outwardly remaining calm. Instead of yelling or breaking things like she perhaps expected, I simply nodded, walked to our bedroom, and packed an overnight bag with essentials. Where are you going? She asked, following me. Out, I replied, taking my laptop and the work files I would need. That is it. You are just leaving. No fight, no conversation. She sounded almost disappointed. I looked at her one last time before walking out. What is there to talk about? I checked into a hotel downtown, spread my work files across the desk, and tried to focus while my personal life imploded. That night, surrounded by spreadsheets and code samples, I realized just how much of myself I had sacrificed for a relationship that apparently meant nothing to her. 2 days after discovering Stephanie's betrayal, my phone buzzed with a text reminder about our friend Taylor's birthday celebration that evening. For a moment I considered skipping it, but that felt like admitting defeat. Besides, I needed to collect more of my belongings from the apartment eventually. I decided to make an appearance, show everyone I was fine, and maintain some dignity. I arrived at the upscale restaurant 15 minutes after the scheduled start time. The moment I walked in, the animated conversation at our reserved table died down. 20 pairs of eyes turned toward me, with expressions ranging from surprise to discomfort. Stephanie was already there, seated beside Brad, their shoulders touching. She wore the red dress I had given her for Christmas, and he had his arm casually draped across the back of her chair. The intimate gesture made it clear that their relationship was not news to anyone in the group. Angelo, we did not think you would come, Taylor said, breaking the awkward silence. She gave me a quick hug that felt obligatory rather than warm. Would not miss your birthday, I replied, taking the only available seat, unfortunately positioned, with a clear view of Stephanie and Brad. Conversations gradually resumed, though noticeably subdued. I ordered a scotch and tried to engage with the friends seated nearby, but their responses were clipped, uncomfortable. Throughout dinner, I caught fragments of whispered conversations. They have been having problems for months. She said he was completely absent. Brad has been there for her while Angelo was always working. During the meal, I noticed how our friends interacted with Stephanie and Brad, as a couple already accepting their relationship without question. They laughed at their inside jokes, asked about their plans for an upcoming concert, and generally treated them as the established couple while I was the awkward extra. The real shock came when Kyle, my friend since college, raised his glass for an impromptu toast. To Taylor, happy birthday, and to new beginnings for all of us, he said, looking meaningfully at Stephanie and Brad. Some relationships are not meant to last, but good friends always know who truly belongs together. Several people nodded in agreement while Stephanie smiled gratefully at him. Brad had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable, but not enough to remove his hand from Stephanie's shoulder. I sat silently processing the fact that my friends had not only accepted the betrayal, but were actively endorsing it. These were people who had been in my home, who had celebrated holidays with us, who knew how hard I had been working to build a future. The breaking point came when Jessica, whom I had considered one of my closest friends, leaned over to me during dessert. Angelo, I know this is hard, but maybe you should try to understand Stephanie's needs better, she whispered. You were never really there for her. Brad makes her happy in ways you could not. Sometimes we have to accept when someone else is a better fit. I looked around the table at the friends who had apparently decided I was the villain in this story. Stephanie caught my eye and gave me that same smirk from our confrontation, the one that said she had won not only Brad, but the support of our entire social circle. Something shifted inside me at that moment. The hurt transformed into clarity. These people were not my friends, and Stephanie was not worth the pain she so clearly enjoyed causing. Without a word, I placed enough cash on the table to cover my meal and a contribution to Taylor's gift. I stood up, smiled, calmly, took my keys, and walked toward the exit. Really, Angelo, you are just going to leave like that? Kyle called after me. Kind of proves Stephanie's point about you not being able to face difficult situations. Does, not it? Several others murmured in agreement. I heard someone say, so childish, and another voice adding, No wonder she needed someone more mature. I did not respond to any of it. With the same smile still on my face, I walked out into the cool evening air, got into my car, and drove away. Their judgments and Stephanie's betrayal faded with each mile as I headed toward my parents' vacation cabin in the Berkshires. They were traveling through Europe for the next month, so the peaceful lakeside property would be empty. That first night alone in the cabin, watching the moonlight reflect off the still water, I finally allowed myself to feel the full weight of the dual betrayal. Not only had my girlfriend of 3 years cheated, but my entire social circle had turned against me without hearing my side. The isolation was both painful and strangely clarifying. The morning after Taylor's birthday dinner, I called my boss to request a week of accumulated vacation time. I had not taken more than a long weekend in 3 years. "Everything okay, Angelo?" Dave asked, genuine concern in his voice. "Just some personal matters that need my attention," I replied. "Take the time you need. You have earned it. Just keep your phone on in case there are questions about the Meridian project." I thanked him and immediately felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Unlike my so-called friends, my professional relationships were built on mutual respect and recognition of my contributions. After sending a brief text to my sister explaining I needed space, but was safe, I turned off my phone. The silence was immediate and liberating. No messages from Stephanie, no performative concern from former friends, no constant ping of work emails, just the rustle of pine trees outside and the occasional call of loons on the lake. The cabin became my sanctuary and thinking space. Each morning I woke with the sunrise brewed coffee and sat on the dock with a legal pad mapping out my life decisions and priorities. The yellow pages filled with revelations, some painful to acknowledge. I had been financing most of our lifestyle, from the apartment in a trendy neighborhood to the weekend getaways Stephanie loved posting about on social media. My promotion had increased our financial comfort, but instead of saving for our future, I had spent it trying to compensate for my physical absence with material presents. On day 3 of my self-imposed exile, I remembered the joint account we had established last year. Stephanie had insisted it would simplify bill payments while I was traveling. There was over $40,000 in that account, money I had been saving toward a house down payment. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I drove 30 minutes to the nearest town with cell reception and called my bank. After authenticating my identity, the customer service representative confirmed my worst fear. "Mr. Russo, there was indeed a withdrawal of $10,000 from your joint account 2 days ago. The transaction was completed in person at our Boston branch." I thanked him, immediately transferred the remaining funds to my personal account, and contacted my lawyer Marcus, who had helped with my first property investment years ago. He agreed to meet me the next morning in town. Over breakfast at a local diner, Marcus listened attentively to my situation, taking detailed notes. "We need to document everything," he advised. "Financial misconduct during a separation can impact how assets are divided." We were not married, I clarified. Still relevant for cohabitation arrangements in Massachusetts. "Let me investigate what she has been doing with those funds." By the 5th day, Marcus had discovered something that made my stomach turn. Bank records showed Stephanie had been using our joint account to purchase gifts for Brad, weekend trips, and even a down payment on a motorcycle for him. My money had been funding their affair for months. Meanwhile, unknown to me, a crisis was developing at work. The Meridian client was scheduled for their final presentation, a crucial meeting where my expertise was essential. Team members were unable to answer technical questions about the custom security protocols I had developed, and the client was growing concerned about implementation without my direct involvement. Dave had apparently been calling me repeatedly, growing increasingly desperate as the multi-million-dollar deal hung in the balance. The client specifically requested my presence before signing the final contract. On the 7th day of my retreat, I finally turned my phone back on. The device vibrated continuously for nearly 2 minutes as notifications flooded in. 32 missed calls in total. 10 from work, 7 from Stephanie, and 15 from various friends, plus dozens of text messages and voicemails. I started with work messages. Dave's communications evolved from casual check-ins to increasingly urgent requests for my return. The most recent simply said, "Angelo client, threatening to walk." Need you tomorrow morning. We'll double your bonus if you make this happen. Next, I reviewed messages from friends. The tone had shifted dramatically over the week. Early messages carried judgment way to ruin Taylor's birthday. So immature walking out like that. We need to talk about your behavior. But later ones showed growing concern. Are you okay? No one has heard from you. Please let someone know you are safe. I am worried about you, please call. The most interesting came from Kyle. Angelo, we need to talk. Brad tried something with Megan last night. I was wrong. Call me. Stephanie's voicemails traveled a similar trajectory. Initial, anger. How dare you empty our account? Evolved into irritation. You cannot just disappear like this, and finally to pleading. Please come back. We need to talk. I made a mistake. Her final message revealed she had been evicted from our apartment since her name was not on the lease and she could not cover the rent alone. I methodically sorted through all communications, then made 3 calls in order of priority. First to Dave, assuring him I would be in the office tomorrow morning for the client meeting. Second to my sister, letting her know I was fine and would visit soon. Third to my landlord, confirming that I would be returning to the apartment and handling the rent myself. I did not call Stephanie or any of the so-called friends. My return would be on my terms, beginning with salvaging my professional reputation before addressing personal matters. The next morning I arrived at the office 30 minutes before the client meeting, freshly shaven and wearing my best suit. Dave nearly collapsed with relief upon seeing me. Thank God you are here. They are threatening to pull the entire contract. The meeting went better than anyone expected. I addressed all technical concerns, demonstrated the security protocols personally, and even suggested additional features that excited the client. By the end of the 3-hour session, not only was the contract saved, but they had upgraded to our premium support package. As the clients left, Dave pulled me into his office. I do not know what happened last week, and I will not pry. But you just saved this company about $7 million in revenue. The executive team has authorized me to offer you a promotion to Senior Development Director, with a 30% salary increase and a substantial bonus for today's save. For the first time in a week, I felt something other than numbness or anger. I felt validated. My return to normal life followed a methodical pattern that reflected my newfound clarity about relationships and personal worth. The first step was securing my professional foundation, which the promotion and bonus had solidified beyond my expectations. Next, I met with Marcus to discuss financial recovery options regarding the money Stephanie had taken. He had built a solid case, documenting her misuse of shared funds. We have clear evidence. She used your joint account to purchase items for a third party without your knowledge or consent, he explained during our follow-up meeting. The court will likely order repayment. We filed the necessary paperwork. And within weeks, Stephanie was legally required to repay the full amount she had misappropriated. The court order arrived at a particularly difficult time for her, as I later learned through mutual acquaintances that her relationship with Brad was already showing strain under financial pressure. According to Troy, who eventually reached out with an apologetic coffee invitation, Brad had expected Stephanie to continue the lifestyle I had provided. When she could not, their passionate affair quickly cooled. They are fighting all the time now, Troy confided. Brad lost his job last month, and they had to move to a studio apartment in Dorchester. Nothing like the place you two had. I listened without comment, finding that their struggles no longer brought me any satisfaction or pain. I had moved beyond both revenge and heartache to something more valuable: indifference. Friends began reaching out one by one, offering apologies and explanations. I was selective about which relationships to rebuild, forgiving those who showed genuine remorse, but maintaining distance from others. Kyle was among the first to admit his mistake, explaining how Stephanie had systematically manipulated the friend group. She told everyone you were emotionally abusive, that you belittled her career, that you had been unfaithful. First, he admitted. We should have questioned it, but she was very convincing. When Brad tried the same moves on Megan that weekend after you left, everything started to unravel. I nodded, accepting his apology, but keeping our renewed friendship at a comfortable distance. Trust once broken could be repaired, but never returned to its original strength. The engagement ring I had purchased months earlier sat in my dresser drawer for weeks before I finally decided to sell it. The money went toward a 2-week vacation to Costa Rica, my first real break in years. The trip provided space for reflection and healing among tropical forests and pristine beaches, far from the chaos of the previous months. 6 months after the fateful birthday dinner, my career was thriving in ways I had never anticipated. The promotion had led to leadership of our security division, allowing me to build my own team and set reasonable work hours. I had learned the hard lesson that no career advancement was worth sacrificing personal well-being. It was during this period that I met Valerie, a talented graphic designer brought in to revamp our product interfaces. Our first conversation during a project meeting revealed a shared interest in rock climbing, which led to weekend trips to the local climbing gym. Unlike my relationship with Stephanie, my connection with Valerie developed slowly, built on genuine friendship and mutual respect before romantic feelings emerged. The most unexpected moment came 8 months after the breakup, when I encountered Stephanie at our once-favorite coffee shop. She looked different. The designer clothes replaced with simpler attire, her confident posture somewhat diminished. "Angelo," she said, approaching my table hesitantly. "You look great." "Thanks," I replied, feeling nothing but mild curiosity. "How have you been?" "Honestly, not great. Brad and I split up 3 months ago." She paused, clearly hoping for a specific reaction. "I have been thinking about us a lot, about how good we were together before things got complicated." I recognized the attempt at reconciliation immediately. 6 months earlier, it might have triggered anger or even a flicker of hope. Now it merely confirmed how far I had come. "I wish you the best, Stephanie," I said sincerely, "but that chapter is closed for me." The look of surprise on her face was evident. She had expected either lingering bitterness or residual attachment, not this calm, complete detachment. 1 year after walking away from the birthday dinner, my life had transformed in ways I never could have predicted. Valerie and I had moved in together, creating a home based on partnership rather than dependency. My friendship circle was smaller, but infinitely more authentic, built around people who had demonstrated loyalty rather than convenient allegiance. The greatest lesson from the entire experience was learning my own worth, not allowing others to define my value based on what I could provide them. I realized that sometimes walking away quietly and without drama is the strongest response to disrespect. The revenge I had initially craved revealed itself in an unexpected form, living well on my own terms. The anger that once consumed me had transformed into gratitude for the painful but necessary awakening that had freed me from relationships built on sand. Have you ever had to walk away from toxic people to reclaim your self-worth? Share your experience in the comments below. Sometimes the strongest statement is made through silence and personal growth, not confrontation. Do not forget to like this video if it resonated with you. Subscribe for more stories about overcoming betrayal, and share with someone who might need to hear that walking away is sometimes the greatest victory. Thank you for listening to my journey from betrayal to breakthrough. Remember, your response to disrespect writes the next chapter of your story, so make it one worth telling.